Thank you so much for being here, Leanne. I'm very excited to have you here and talk about different amazing work that you're doing and also that things that are happening in our community.
Thank you.
Something that I'm interested in is like when it pertains to like childhood and like youth wellness, and as it means like raising healthy children on contaminated land. What do you think that looks like for our youth currently?
I would say for our youth, it's impacting our health first and foremost. And so the idea of having food sovereignty, right? Healthy food helps drive your energy. It drives your health. It impacts how productive you are in school. It impacts how we interact with one another. It impacts our mood, right? And all of those things are demonstrations of the current state of many neighborhoods that we have here in our urban communities. And that is, in my opinion, contributing to the violence in our communities and our how we interact with family.
Yeah. And something I'm kind of curious about is like, what is the relationship that I know you've done doula work? So like, what is some of the relationship between like our foods all the way to like pre-birth, right? Like pre-womb, right? Like, and exiting or whatever you might call it, birthing, right?
Birthing or exiting, I don't know. That's interesting. Some things that folks often are not aware of is that when we are born, we're born with the eggs that we have for the rest of our lives. And what we eat and what we put into the soil impacts the quality of our eggs. And in a lot of ways, that is also indicative or can be connected to our infant maternal mortality rates. What's happening in our bodies as we're carrying our babies, what's happening in our bodies when our babies are getting their first foods, which is breast milk, hopefully, which is food sovereignty, is our ability to breastfeed and for our babies to have access to breast milk. And then formula, that's a whole another animal. Like as formula being made in a good way, we realize that breastfeeding isn't going to be an option for everyone for whatever reason. Thank goodness for milk banks, right? But if we're not taking care of ourselves, or if we don't have access to the tools that we need to take care of ourselves, that's what we're putting into our babies' bodies.
Yeah, right. Because even when I know that there's stats, or when we asked our scientific scholars, they say that sometimes that level of contamination doesn't go to our breast milk, but actually does to a degree.
Everything goes into our breast milk. Right? How can it not? It's everything I put in my body, even when you're pregnant, right? When you're carrying a baby, everything that you, what you're feeling, your baby's feeling, what you're eating, your baby's eating. That is, I don't see how that could not impact the quality of our breast milk, just like what you put into the soil impacts the fruit that comes out of the, from the trees that we're eating. How's the quality of that? There's a lot of people now that are developing allergies to fruits because of what's going into the soil and the pesticides, even organic fruits. So I would think that if our foods, are coming from the earth, are being impacted by what's going into the soil, which then we are ingesting, we're being impacted by that on one level or another, just like breast milk.
That's true. Something I'm also thinking about is how has this impacted our traditional birthing practices? I know the Dene sometimes give birth outside. Or...
I mean, historically, many of us would birth outside. Birthing in water can be problematic in situations such as this, where the conditions of our waters and our waterways and our soil are not as healthy. Also, in some traditions, taking your baby out and putting them, letting them touch the soil Or even our kids going out and playing. And, you know, some folks, you know, back in the day, you were younger and they're like, let the kids play, get dirty. That's how you build up their immune system. You know, nowadays, is it okay for, you know, a small child to accidentally ingest some, you know, dirt the way that, you know, the way that we used to run and play the way that we used to. So I think that the quality of our land and how it's impacting our ability to return to our traditional birth ways is impacting us in every way imaginable.
What would you say are some of the ways that our that our kids are like possibly impacted to their connection of the land, right? Like when we go and we teach them how to harvest or how to gather.
Well, I know that my sons are able to go out with folks and do that, and oftentimes they have to go further out, or they're having to go to places that are less that have not been disrupted, because well, for a number of reasons, but part of that is because of contamination. Are we able to fish in certain waterways? You know, we're on Coast Salish lands, and you know that's really important. And some of that has definitely been impacted.
What does it mean to like mother?
Oh gosh, what it means to mother, and I think the answer to that question is different for everyone, but it's to care for, right? I'm caring for this land, I'm caring for this child, I'm caring for these children, right? You know, it takes a village, and so I'm caring for the community. Oftentimes people will replace caring for the word mothering, because we are in a lot of ways putting things before ourselves. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what Mother Earth has done, is created all these amazing ways for us to sustain ourselves selflessly, right? And now she's not getting what she needs in return to continue to sustain herself. And that's what we're seeing is the loss of certain waterways, global warming and things like that. I wouldn't dare call myself an environmentalist, but as I think of it in that context, that's what it feels like to me. And if we're not putting back, which was the ask, right, is that what you give, what's given to you, you give back in whatever way that looks like to you, right? And if we're not pouring back into Mother Earth the way that Mother Earth has poured into us, then what do we have left? What does she have left to give?
I think that also another aspect is what would you say would be some of the work that Native and non-Native people can do to like protect some of the reproductive rights? I know that there's like sometimes they don't allow doulas into like hospitals, or like sometimes people are like, you should get your blood level for your kid tested, or even birthing practices say that while you were pregnant you were exposed to contaminants.
I think first, one thing people need to remember is that birth is the one thing that's required of everyone in order for us to be here. And so respecting birth is critical. And because of that, I think that we should all have an equal investment in the outcome of birth. So, and that crosses gender or gender identity, right? You know, you can still go back to your parent and say, what was birth like for me? Or go to your child and what was birth like to me? Or go to a sister or another relative and talk about birth, right? We've all heard stories, many of us, about what birth was like, what it's looked like, or so, you know. So we all should take part in these outcomes and how important they are. And when we look at what our infant maternal mortality rates and the rapid rates that we are being impacted by these things, and that crosses socioeconomic status. So that is no matter where you are living, no matter how you are living, those numbers still look the same. So when I think about how we can all participate in that, first having an equal investment in the outcome of birth. Whether you're from the same community or not, my kids are going to grow up and they're going to have to interact with one another from a distance or up close, right? Business wise, academically, athletically, whatever that can look like, or may look like. And so for folks who are following their medicine is what I call it, like, what's your medicine? What's the gift that Creator's given you? And for me, that's all things birth. I love it, right? And for other folks, that's talking about the environment. For other folks, that might be talking about food. And when we look at all these different things in the work that you're doing, ask yourself, how does that impact birth? How could it impact birth? In what ways? And if once you get that answer, then what is my responsibility? Right? So just like the work that you're doing and you're asking these amazing questions, I know nothing about lead. I know nothing about the work that you do, right? But I understand that this is the intersection for you and I. And once we are able to sit at a table together and have a conversation about where those intersections are, then we can start to positively impact the outcomes of birth for our birthing people and babies. So to answer your question, we need to, these food deserts, we need to be having better access to to healthy soil, right? Lands that have healthy soil and that we can plant so that we can have healthy food, so that birthing people are able to sustain themselves and fill their bodies with food that is going to healthily contribute to a body that can even carry a baby if they're not pregnant at the time, right? How can also, partners be of support, right? You don't want a partner who's working so hard that they can't even be present to support the birthing person, right? Or they have to drive further out to get healthier food. There have been plenty of times I've been in certain areas, and even to this day, where I will say I don't buy fruit there.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. Why people choose to live in certain areas because I like going to this market, right? Or I go to this market because I know that they put good food here because there's white people here. There's wealthy white people in this community. These are all real issues. And so how can we fix those? How can we reconcile those things? It would be to, again, have the equal access or equal investments in the outcomes, so that we can then put healthy food in stores, so that we can have healthy soil to put healthy food in stores. What's happening with our meat? That's a whole other, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are the cows eating? What are the elk eating? The chickens. So the quality of our eggs that we're eating. All of those things are impacting how we are able to focus, at work, at school, right? And then what happens when they label our kids with, or misdiagnose our kids?
Yeah.
Right? Because of how they have, what they have to eat or what they don't have to eat at home. So I think that when we're aware of what's going on with our bodies, that doesn't matter what career you have, right? When you're aware of what's going on with your body and the accountability and the responsibility that you have, and look at everything around you with the eyes of gratitude, through a lens of gratitude, and knowing that this didn't come from anywhere. Our ancestors cared for this land. Someone else's ancestors cared for this land. Mother Earth has created this place and sustained this land so that we have a land to care for. And so I think that that's the best way to start to build a healthy relationship, right? Because some of those relationships have to be reconciled. Because if I said to you, well, treat the land the way that you treat your mom, if you don't have a healthy relationship with your mom, then what I said means nothing, or at least it doesn't promote my agenda.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think that through the lens of healing justice, it's really important for us to start doing some work on ourselves, so that we can create a better space for the communities around us and for the generations that are coming after. There's so many creation stories, and actually and even stories from history, where when colonizers came, they were taking our land. And one of the ways they did that is they would burn down our crops. They would kill our buffalo, right? or even, during the transatlantic slave trade, when women brought seeds in their hair of okra and, black eyed peas, right? So in doing that, coming here to care for our land and to be able to stay connected and have a connection, right? Like establish and understand and recognize that there is a connection to what you're eating. And these are all our relatives, everything, it's alive. And to treat it that way are ways that I think that we can start to heal. So not just looking at what we are, so what the problem is, but why do we have the problem? And understanding that our bodies carry deep memories. Just like we can pass, are you genetically predisposed to hypertension, right? You're genetically predisposed to traumas too. And when our bodies see that and feel that, and that's our cellular structures react differently. And those things need to be reconciled so that we can have better relationships. And then we also can talk to the people that need to be accountable, who are in powerful places, right? That are putting this poison into our soil and our water.
I think you covered everything. You covered everything.
Sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, don't apologize. Definitely, because it shows that everything's like interconnected, right? From like history all the way to now, and like how we're impacted with intergenerational historical trauma and resilience because of it, and like our birthing practices and everything that just goes with it, to like how food deserts are currently happening. And like if you need to go and you want to harvest or grow your traditional foods, go into like contaminated soil, you kind of can't, and so forth.
And so what do we do? What do we do? What do you do when you're at home and you're looking in the refrigerator and you're like, man, I promised myself I was not going to order any more food, right? I promised myself I was going to cook. If you look in the refrigerator and you don't have any food in there, right? What are you going to do? You're not going to just say, let me go to the store real quick. Most people are going to say, I'm going to order some food.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so if we're going to our gardens and they're dry and there's no food, or it doesn't look healthy, what are we going to do? We're going to go to McDonald's, or we're going to go get some top ramen. Never mind the conversation about affordability, right? Because the better the quality of the food, the more expensive it is. And so there's definitely like systemic racism that's involved in that, and that's impacting our ability to have healthy food. Because I wonder, right, the question could be, well, in these wealthier areas, what's their soil like? It would be amazing to me to then to have the soil tested in a wealthier community and compare it to a community in South King County. I wonder what that would look like and how we could even answer that. So if we took the work that you're doing and looked at it through a systemic racism lens, and we looked at the outcomes from our approaches to figuring that out, I think that some of our processes would change.
Do you have anything else to add, Leanne, or do you think it's a wrap?
I
think you.
I know I went on a tangent, so
I think you covered everything. That's why I'm like, you already covered everything that I.
You're like, darn it,
on the sheet. That's perfect.
I don't think that being a mother just means that you birthed someone. No, being a mother is a selfless act. Being a parent is selfless, and Mother Earth has been very selfless.
Yeah.
It's interesting how, we always say we're going back to the land, and, folks want to go home or it's important to touch the soil. And yeah, so I wish there was a movement of people who could really just sit down and really get to know themselves. Because when you're able to connect yourself to what's going on, then you care. I mean, it's fair. If you share something with me about your culture that I didn't know, now I'm interested, and now I'm like, oh, wow. I feel connected to that. I can relate because something like this happens in my community. Yeah. Right. Now I have an equal investment in the outcome. And that's just human nature. There's also stories, right, about trees, how trees are super selfless. And no matter what their quality of life is, they are still going to let other trees know when there's fungus in the area or there's something deadly in the area, to preserve the other plants and trees.
Thank you so much for your time,
Absolutely.
Leanne.
I appreciate you.
Where can people find you in case they have more information or questions?
Oh my, I would say the quickest way is shoot me an email. Leanne.ryebrock@gmail.com. LeanneNE.RYEBROCK@gmail.com. Always down to engage in conversation, offer up resources, and connect with folks so that we can build and grow.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Yakoke.